we were both frustrated. And it was ironic because we're both introverts and we were both taking out those frustrations in the wrong way. I made a mistake. I did, and I did pay for it. I should not have sworn. That is unacceptable in the workplace, and honestly, I'm quite lucky I didn't get fired. I think just because the CEO liked me is why I stayed with the team. But after Ralph, he made it a mission. He said, I'm going to bring down Jeff. This guy swore at me. Screw him. He and others at the company did everything they possibly could to make my life as hard as possible. They left me out of emails. They sent me wrong information. I stopped getting invited out to lunches. I stopped getting invited out to drinks. It was a disaster. I went to the CEO. I said, sir, I quit the company. The CEO, he liked my work. He decided to keep me on as a consultant. So I did leave my formal role, but I stayed on as a consultant and reported to the CEO. Well, what can we take from this situation? I'm sharing these disaster situations on purpose because there are valuable leadership insights that perhaps we can consider. And again, take it or leave it. Take what you resonate with, discard the rest. One thing is that Ralph could have been more open in his communication, as I could have as well. So Ralph was feeling a certain way about me. He didn't like my work. He didn't even really like me at a certain point anymore. But he didn't share that with me. He just went straight to my boss. He didn't give a chance for that to really resolve. Also for me, when I reflected on the situation, I realized, oh, okay, yeah, I was checking in with him a lot, but I could have also done different approaches. I could have said, hey Ralph, what do you think of my work? Hey Ralph, can I get your ideas on this? There are things I could have done differently to prevent this from exploding in such a huge way. So both sides there. Another thing, don't hide stuff. Ralph was hiding how he felt. I was feeling a certain way. I was getting worried about deadlines. I was hiding it as well. Don't hide stuff. And also do what's right even when others disagree. Do what's right even when it's not easy. How I embodied that is when we had the meeting, me, Ralph, the CEO, and one of the other executives, I realized I can't keep working with Ralph. We're just running in circles. We're not getting anything done. So I knew it was a right call, and I decided to basically demand I'm not working with this guy anymore. One last thing that I'll touch on while we're talking about this situation with Ralph. I really did make a mistake. I've already shared that, but I will say that I created this situation. I'm not blaming Ralph. I have no hard feelings for Ralph whatsoever. He was fanning the flames, but I poured gasoline onto the fire. I left my values. I became someone that I wasn't. I acted impulsively, I acted foolishly. I really own that. And I did pay the price because 90% of the company literally hated me after that. And I deserved it because most people would get fired for swearing. It's just the CEO, he liked me, I got lucky. As we bring this all together now, I have a few tips to share around what you can do when you're in a situation when you're acting authentically and others are not. So you're being an authentic leader. Maybe there are a few things you resonated from what I shared with here today, and you decide you're putting this into practice, but what do you do when others around you are not? And I thought this tech company I worked for in Rotterdam was the perfect example to share because that was exactly the situation I was in, especially when people stopped collaborating with me. One, seek social support. Maybe it's with your colleagues. Maybe it's with former colleagues, maybe it's calling a lifeline, maybe it's a distant relative. Seek social support, it's so important. What I did when I was getting misunderstood by a lot of the people in the company, I had video calls with two very close friends, and they acknowledged me. They said, Jeff, yeah, you were far from perfect, but that's a very toxic company, and I felt very acknowledged. So I didn't really feel heard or understood by the people in the company, but I did feel heard and acknowledged by my friends. Another thing to consider when you're acting authentically and others are not, self-leadership. All authentic leadership starts with leading yourself. So the way I put this into practice is that big strategy that I was creating for the company. No one wanted to work with me anymore. I did it by myself. There are a few people who actually tried to sabotage me as well. There was one guy who started trying to prevent me from being able to contract with other companies as well. It got really, really ugly. And what I did was I funneled all my frustration into creating an incredible strategy. Now that wasn't good for my relationship with my girlfriend, but it was good for this presentation. I said, I'm gonna kick butt. I got up at strategy week, And I remember there was like 4 or 5 people in the audience, like their faces were, they weren't hiding it, they were shriveled up. They said it all. I don't like this guy, I'm rooting for him to fail. Public speaking is not easy at all. It's even harder when you have people in the audience, like at this company, staring at me with feelings of dislike. But I had spent weeks putting my heart and soul into creating an epic presentation, and I crushed it. The CEO loved it. Several of my colleagues came up to me and said, Jeff, I did not expect that. I didn't expect you to do so well in this presentation, especially after what happened. Great job. And then the people who were rooting for me to fail, they didn't talk to me after that. Here's another thing to consider. When you are acting authentically, others around you are not, is to lead from within. Another way to say that is lead from your heart. We're talking about being yourself. I'm going to share a few very quick data points here, just to make this as practical as possible. One data point I came across by Proof Hub, a project planning software company, found that 99.1% of people in the American workforce prefer open and honest communication. 99.1%. And then at the same time, keep that statistic in mind, I came across another study and research point that really caught my attention by the Ethics and Compliance Initiative, a global business ethics survey, the first of its kind. I was reading up on this, preparing for today, and this study showed that 30% of people in the American workforce have witnessed rule violations. 30%, and that's just what we see. That's only the tip of the iceberg. And we're just talking about the workforce. Now, me and others cannot even imagine the kind of challenges that you have. You have one of the hardest jobs in the world as a police officer, or an investigator, or a prosecutor, or a lawyer, or whatever it is that you do. And I can't imagine the struggles that you go through. So I'm thinking, well, if this is in the workplace, what is happening out there? So I thought to myself, I better bring some good examples here. Well, how do we bridge this? 99% of people prefer open communication, and there are the majority of people who aren't doing it, and that bridge is authentic leadership. So I'm just giving you a different way, and you can consider it if perhaps you want to put that into practice. Authentic leaders think and act in terms of solutions. So they will often say things like, what's next? How do we solve this? Where do we go from here? And it's a different paradigm. I'll say it's a different ball game. A couple other quick things to share with you here. Don't wear a mask. Don't wear a mask. I came across a study by Deloitte that literally caused my mouth to drop open. 61% of people in the American workforce do not feel comfortable in any way being themselves in their jobs. 61% of people in the American workforce. When you wear a mask, it creates a disconnect. And when you have a disconnect, you have low trust, low engagement, and low performance. I'm talking practical here today.